So this video will talk about the moral and religious opposition to organ harvesting and trafficking of body parts. Organ harvesting and the trafficking of human organs can be practices that raise profound ethical, moral, and religious concerns. While medical advancements have made organ transplants a life-saving solution for many, the methods by which organs are obtained, especially through coercion, exploitation, and illicit trade, violate fundamental principles of human dignity as well as ethics. Many world religions, including Hinduism, Buddhism, and so forth, strongly oppose such practices due to their core beliefs about the sanctity of life, karma, dharma, and compassion. This video will explore why organ harvesting and trafficking are considered to be morally wrong in almost every sense of the word in various religious traditions and how these perspectives contribute to the global ethical discourse on the issue. So let's talk about the ethical and moral dimensions of organ harvesting. Organ harvesting refers to the removal of organs, often without consent, for transplantation or sale. In cases of trafficking, organs are obtained from vulnerable populations through coercion, deception, or brute force, and these acts undermine the sanctity of human life, commodify the human body, and exploit the most defenseless members of our society. If you've ever watched an episode of Black and Missing, you know what I'm talking about. The immorality of organ trafficking is universally condemned as it not only violates human rights but also contradicts the ethical principles upheld by major religious traditions. Let's look at Hinduism's perspective on organ harvesting. Well, Hinduism, one of the most oldest religions in the world, places strong emphasis on dharma, moral duty, karma, the law of cause and effect, and ahimsa, which is the non-violent principle. These principles collectively shape the Hindu view on sanctity of human life, as well as the ethical considerations surrounding organ harvesting and trafficking as a whole. Firstly, we have the sanctity of the body. In Hinduism, the human body is seen as a sacred vessel given by the divine for spiritual development. While voluntary organ donation can be seen as an act of selfless service, seva, the non-consensual or forced removal of organs, disrupts the natural cycle of life and death. If you ever saw the movie 7 Pounds with Will Smith, while necessarily it wasn't that they were taken from him, but he felt compelled to give them, it kind of shows you just how morally wrong it all seems in some form or another. So with karma now, we have the moral and immoral actions that have repercussions in the future lives. The acts of violence and exploitation, such as organ trafficking, continuing to contribute to negative karma both for perpetrators and those complicit in the practice, are just quite alarming and, insane, right? You have ahimsa, which is our principle of nonviolence, and this means that it's the cornerstone of Hindu ethics. Organ harvesting, primarily when conducted forcibly, is an extreme form of violence that is considered an unacceptable violation of this fundamental belief. In other words, if someone has to cut you open while you're restrained against your will to remove kidneys, this is terribly, terribly wrong. Now we have dharma, which dictates moral responsibilities and ethical living. The exploitation of the poor and vulnerable for organ trade is an outright violation of dharma, as it promotes injustice, suffering, and moral decay. Buddhism also has a perspective on organ harvesting as well. Buddhism is another ancient tradition that emphasizes compassion, non-attachment, and ethical living, as well as strongly condemns organ harvesting and trafficking. So first we have compassion and loving kindness, which is metta. Buddhism teaches the practice of metta or loving kindness, which encourages individuals to act with compassion and to avoid causing harm to others. Organ harvesting, especially when done through coercion or force, is pretty much a direct violation of this Buddhist principle. Right livelihood. We have the Noble Eightfold Path, which guides ethical Buddhist living, including right livelihood, meaning that one's means of earning should not harm others. The organ trade, often driven by greed and exploitation, contradicts this ideal and contributes to a cycle of suffering. If you ever heard about the story of George Washington, you would find that he had bad teeth, and while we always hear of him having wooden teeth, he did at one point start to buy the teeth of slaves who needed the money. Principles of non-harm ahimsa, similar to Hinduism, Buddhism upholds ahimsa as a fundamental teaching. Organ trafficking and forced harboring are acts of violence and inflict suffering, thus violating the essential tenets of Buddhism. Karma and rebirth, actions rooted in greed and harm generate negative karma, affecting not only the present life but also future rebirth. The exploitation inherent in organ trafficking perpetuates suffering for all involved, both victim and perpetrators. The universal religious condemnation of organ trafficking goes like this. Beyond Hinduism and Buddhism, many other religions simply oppose organ trafficking based on their ethical teachings. Christianity. The Christian faith emphasizes the inherent dignity of human beings, the sanctity of life, and the immorality of exploiting the vulnerable. Organ trafficking is viewed as a grave injustice that contradicts Jesus' teachings of love and compassion. Secondly, we have Islam. Islam upholds the sanctity of human life, and while organ donation is a permissible matter in some interpretations, organ trafficking is strictly forbidden due to its exploitative and coercive nature. In Judaism, Jewish teachings emphasize that the ethical responsibility to protect human life is there, that organ donation can be seen as an act of pikchuak, right, nefresh, right, which is saving a life. The illicit trade of organs violates Jewish ethical laws, and so how does this drive the global response? Well, the growing crisis of organ trafficking, governments and international organizations have implemented legal frameworks to combat these practices. For example, the World Health Organization and the Declaration of Istanbul have both condemned organ trafficking and called for ethical standards in organ transplantation. Religious organizations also play a vital role as well in advocating against organ trafficking, raising awareness and promoting ethical medical practices. Among many religions too, you would just find that, if you're not donating it and they're taking it from you, you probably committed a grievous wrong. So in conclusion, organ harvesting and trafficking represent grave violations of human rights, as well as ethical values deeply condemned by religious traditions across the world. Hinduism and Buddhism, among others, emphasize the sanctity of life, nonviolence, and the ethical responsibility of all which stand in opposition to the exploitation and the commodification of human organs. Religious and moral perspectives reinforce the need for ethical policies, legal interventions, and societal awareness to prevent the harm caused by these illicit practices. The fight against organ trafficking must be a global effort, driven by ethical considerations, religious teachings, as well as human compassion. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you're new here, this is a safe space. If you're returning, I love and appreciate you so much, and I'm glad that you're back. In the name of the Most High God, I wish you health, wealth, prosperity, and abundance. Blessings and protection. Signing off. Take care. Have a great day.